March 17th meeting of the City of Hamilton Plan Commission. First order of business is a Pledge of Allegiance.
Here.
Samantha Stockman.
Here.
Ann Herbert.
Here.
William Hutton.
Here.
Michael Pinker.
Here.
Kim White. Thomas White.
Here.
6 present. We have a quorum.
We have the February 18th meeting minutes. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes. Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions or comments on the minutes? Hearing none. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Motion passes. Do we have any old business?
No old business.
New business. First one is CP 14-02, petition of DT Retail Properties LLC for approval of a partial release of a no-access easement on Lot 3, Home Depot Woodmar Addition, commonly known as 1610 165th Street. Is there somebody here representing that property owner?
For the record, Shannon, were the notification requirements met?
State your name.
Jake Balla with Nice Engineering. Sure.
Proceed.
We'd like a partial release and termination of a 5-foot no-access strip at 1610 165th Street for the development of a Dollar Tree.
Can you explain a little bit more as to where it's at and the reason why?
Sure. The no-access strip goes around the property except for the last roughly 20 feet at the back of the property towards Home Depot. We'd like to move that north 13 feet or 14.49 feet on the west side and 4.5 feet on the east side to allow for trucks to enter the facility.
So does that affect only the east side of the property?
It affects both the east and west side. The east side will be moved 14.49 feet, and the east side will be moved 4.5 feet to the north, and the west 14.49 feet to the north.
Mr. DeStotney.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm not quite certain I understand what's going on, and this drawing's mighty small.
Thank you. I thought it was just me.
You're welcome, Mr. White. Is there a Reader's Digest or, the enlarged version?
Did you look at this one too?
There's this one too. I was looking at, this one is tough.
Yeah, when I looked at the plant drawing, I didn't really know what that was trying to tell me, but the other one gives you some idea where they're going to be entering. They're going to be entering as far south as they can on the parcel.
Yeah, I mean, that is the...
How was that lot laid out originally, Brian? How was somebody supposed to get into it?
Yeah.
Ask your question again?
the way that lot's laid out, if it's got a no access easement on both sides, how are you supposed to access the parcel?
When this was platted, both this lot and the frontage lot had no access easements that restricted the access to the property to the southern end of the parcel. There is approximately, and I don't know the exact, oh, actually, I can read that. Right now, on the west side, there is 29 point something feet, and the other side, I can't read the number. So they had almost, 29 to 30 feet in order to make that turning radius. What they described to us is that as the truck comes in on the west drive, because of the turning radius of that vehicle, that they would not be able to make the designated area in which the curb cut was open. So this is just to widen that up so the driveway can be, widen the driveway so that the truck can make the movement.
Okay, so there were two access easements, they just weren't wide enough for truck movements.
Correct.
That makes more sense. Now I understand. You were in the same boat I was, right?
Crystal clear.
Okay. So we're having a public hearing on this today?
Yes.
Why? If it's just a release of easement? Is that appropriate?
We always have a public hearing on any subdivision matter. And since this is a release of easement, it's just making sure that if there's interested parties that may have an issue with the change or not. This is linked to another subdivision. Any of how this was laid out, any change would potentially affect the other property owners. They would have an opportunity to express that, and that's the reason for the public hearing and the public notifications.
Okay, so if there's nothing else to your presentation, are there any questions from any of the Plan Commission members? Then I'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to ask a question or make a comment on CP 1402? Anyone in the audience? Last chance, anyone in the audience? That closes the public hearing. I don't think there's any other question. This is pretty clear cut. You want to read the staff report, Brian, or just
I'll summarize it.
recommendation?
Yeah, just summarizing it. But the information was provided in the petition, to release a part of the easement in order to, as we stated, to have for the truck movements. We reviewed it, and we determined that there was really no major effect on the subdivision plat, and staff recommends that the Plan Commission approve the partial release. One of the issues, as noted in the report, is that the petitioner is a contingent purchaser, and only a property owner can make this change. And we're recommending that the Plan Commission approve the partial release, subject to DT Realty Properties acquiring the parcel, and at that time that we would sign the release for it to be recorded. And then if the Plan Commission agrees with this recommendation, that the staff recommends that this report is adopted as findings of fact.
Is there anyone who would like to make that motion?
I would make the motion.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments on the motion? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Roger Brown,
Yes.
Ken Stefani,
Yes?
Ann Herbert,
Yes.
William Hutton,
Yes.
Michael Finger.
Yes.
Thomas White,
Yes.
6 ayes, 0 nays, 0 abstentions, motion passed.
Okay, Brian, do we need to do anything else with it?
Yeah, because your motion, I'm assuming, was to adopt the report as findings of fact. Your next motion is to approve the partial release of easement, subject to the owner acquiring the property.
Does anyone want to make that motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Hearing none. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Motion passes. So that completes CP 14-02. We'll move on to CP 14-3, petition of Loop Land LLC and Harris NA Trust, number 6401 and 5374, for final approval of a two-lot subdivision called Luke's 165th Calumet addition to the city of Hammond at 6450 Calumet, 735 165th Street, which is Zone C4 General Commercial District. Is the petitioner here? Please state your name.
Dan Tersman with Luke Oil.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. President, just again for the record, were the notifications met?
Yes, they were.
Hi there. We'd like to present a petition for a two-lot subdivision of the property at 6450 Calumet Avenue for recording of deed of dedication for a northern portion of the property to be used to address a alleyway for the city.
Any questions for the petitioner?
Yes, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
According to this plan, it looks like you guys, when you do your remodeling, you're gonna add a car wash, and that's the need for the extra space or the alley space?
Yes, sir. Yeah, we have plans for future development of the lot to the west of our current C-store that would involve a car wash.
Mr. President, just to further elaborate on Mr. Pinker's question, it is written in my report, the long history of this property. Just for the basic information, this does go back to the year 2000, in which the station was constructed at that time. There was a T-shaped alley that bisected the property, and that alley, those alley segments were vacated by the city council. The requirement was that the plat would be created in order to give us the replacement alley. For whatever, there were various reasons why that plat was never recorded. Then in 2009, that was when Luke Oil did acquire the property, and they revisited the issue of constructing the car wash. The BZA approved the car wash with the sound barrier walls that are laid out on the site plan. And one of the requirements of that approval was to finalize the subdivision plat, in which, again, the alley would be granted back to the city. Beginning last year, the project was revived again after, for whatever reasons, the plat was not recorded. And that's when it was brought to our attention that there were actually two property owners, not a single property owner that we were informed of originally. And so that is the reason for two lots in the subdivision. It is reflective of the true ownership of the property. Nonetheless, it is a requirement of the BZA approval to, as well as the original approval in 2000, to have the plat finalized, and that's what this is accomplishing, is cleaning up all of those outstanding, or this outstanding issue regarding the subdivision plat and the proper dedication of the alley.
Any other questions?
I do have one question, not to belabor the point, but this L-shaped alley is now accessible for vehicles?
When you say,
We are going through it right now.
The one that's now being platted, yeah, it was constructed back, probably in the year 2000, because also at that time, that's when the utility poles were relocated out of the center of the property to the perimeter. And so, yeah, the actual physical alley was constructed at that time.
Garbage trucks and everybody can get down it easily. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
That's why the dedication is slightly wider to create enough room for the garbage trucks to make the turn. I remember being involved in that. So we have a public hearing on this today?
Yes, we do.
So I'd like to open the public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to comment on CP 1403? Anyone in the audience?
The two property owners of the.
Would you step up to the microphone?
You said that there were,
Yeah, what's your name and address?
You just sign in also, please.
Virginia Tate, 6511 Jefferson. Who are the two property owners of the, you said there were two property owners, and that was a confusion there?
Yeah, one of the property owners is, and I'm trying to get their exact name, it's what, Luke Land LLC? Luke Land LLC. And it was a Harris Bank Trust, number something, but it was
401 and 5374.
Okay, so it's them in the bank? That's what you're saying?
yes, well, it's not a trust, not so much the bank, but a trust that it happens to be in a bank, yes.
Any other questions? Anyone else? If there's no one else, I'm going to close the public hearing. Public hearing's closed. Brian, you want to?
Yeah, I've already expressed the history and the background portion of that's in my report. As far as the staff recommendation is concerned, staff has reviewed the new subdivision. The plat does meet the requirements. There was a minor technical change that is not reflected in the version that you have, but that's something that we'll take care of at the staff level. It is, since the subdivision previously went through all of our agency review, and the utilities have already been relocated, we did not require that step that we'd go back through the agency review. Staff therefore recommends that the Planning Commission grant both preliminary and final approval to the two-lot subdivision, subject to receiving that final technical correction.
Okay. Does anyone want to make the motion to adopt the findings of fact?
So moved.
As modified?
I'll second.
As modified.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Hearing none. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Motion passes. Now, does this have to go to this is a rezone, right? So this have to go to council?
It's a subdivision, and your next motion is to grant preliminary and final
Yeah,
approval.
subdivision plat, sorry.
Yeah. So it's, you're being asked to grant preliminary and final approval of the plat, subject to receiving the final technical corrections.
Anyone want to make that motion?
I would make that motion.
I'll second the motion.
Any questions or comments on the motion? Hearing none. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Motion passes. That's it. Move on to CP 1404. Petition to the Hammond Plan Commission for a text amendment to zoning ordinance 8514, Title 18, Special Provisions Regarding Outdoor Seating for Restaurants. Brian.
Yes, Plan Commission members, obviously I will make the presentation on this. This is a proposal coming from the staff to make an amendment to the text of the zoning ordinance. You should have been handed out at the beginning of the meeting a corrected version. One of the reasons that this has come up is that we have a restaurant that wants to locate in the Oxbow area. And one of the things that they want to develop is a type of seating that kind of acts as an outdoor-indoor space. And that led to us reviewing our language that we have currently in the zoning ordinance. Primarily, what the ordinance says is that all activities must occur inside a building. And so that led us to thinking about other opportunities with restaurateurs if they want to open up outdoor space, whether it's completely outside, covered by a canopy or some other type of temporary structure in that way, or something where it goes back to the specific request of the restaurateur, is that it'll be a roofed area in which basically they'll have some type of wall mechanism or garage door, if you think of it that way, in which the wall would be retracted back and it would be open air. So we developed language that would address what we call the open air situation, which is the one I just described, and then actual space that would be completely outside. And we developed 2 levels of it, which would be based on the number of seating, a limited outdoor area, and then a general outdoor area. And the difference being if you have 8 seats or less, you're a limited outdoor area, and 9 seats or greater, you would be the general outdoor. Part of what opens up the concerns is that when you have outdoor seating, there's a lot of potential noise generation that comes from it. And so you start looking at what effects that may have on the adjacent property owners. In particular, our concern would be residential property owners. Many of our commercial areas are on major streets, Calumet Avenue, Kennedy, Indianapolis. Those areas immediately abut residential areas. So we want to make sure that we have regulations in place that would control a situation. If we do have outdoor seating, how can we regulate that to make sure that doesn't become a nuisance for the adjacent property owners? We approached this amendment as treating the outdoor seating as an accessory use, and that 2 of the 3 types would be something that we would be able to permit automatically. The 3rd type, meaning the general one that has the 9 seats or greater, that would require a public hearing through the Board of Zoning Appeals as a conditional use permit. One of those things of noise is like, obviously the more people you have, the greater the noise generation could be. We have language in there about if any of them have outdoor speakers or outdoor music, make sure that is turned off at a certain time. So residential areas or even adjacent commercial areas are not negatively affected or bothered by a significant amount of noise generation. So at this time, are there any questions?
Does this address outdoor seating on public right-of-way?
No, we chose not to address it on the public right-of-way. This is specific to on private property.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a whole nother question and would entail.
Yeah, because that may come up too one day.
It may, and
it's become very popular in Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, Stan, a lot of our sidewalks are very narrow, and there's a limited place or space for that to occur. Because of those complications, we kind of just decided to not deal with it at this time. You get into making sure that the sidewalk is free and clear for its public access portion of it, and how do you really address that? So, in the future we may do that, but we chose not to at this time.
Okay.
The notice to adjacent property owners is at 150 feet. Just trying to visualize that in reference to sound, music, light. I got to figure the average car is what, 18 feet long, maybe? In car spaces, how far that away? It doesn't seem like it's very much distance.
Well, that is something that I did discuss with the zoning administrator as to at what point in time does it become an effect. And, we all know that sound travels. But you get to a point of, there's, just in an urban environment, there's always intervening structures that will, dissipate that sound. We thought of it more in the sense of who would be the most affected or even annoyed by the noise, and that would be the most immediate people. We can't stop every noisy situation, but there is the noise ordinance, and that is referenced or cross-referenced in here, is that, if there is a complaint from any property owner, if it exceeds the allowances in the noise ordinance, they can still file a complaint through the Environmental Management Department. But we just decided, it was just a decision that Don and I had made.
Yeah, that's a quarter of a block, because our typical city block's about 600 feet long.
Okay.
Half a football field.
Any questions? Is there a public hearing for this, Brian?
Yes, there is a public.
How come, was the public adequately notified? For that specific location?
No,
Or for,
because it's a text amendment to the zoning ordinance, that requires a legal notice in the newspaper.
okay,
I do have a question, though, may I?
yes.
Thank you. Who is going to control or regulate the number of additional parking spaces that are going to be needed, which takes us into the zoning ordinance of lighting, landscaped areas, percentages, et cetera, and et cetera? Who's going to regulate that?
That is still normally done by the zoning administrator. As a permit is, or request is presented, he'll look at all of those applications to make sure that the lighting meets the requirements within the zoning ordinance, that, the building commissioner is going to be a significant part of that review process for exiting purposes, fire safety, all those types of things that go in with that. And that's where it says in here that a seating chart, or in essence, a floor plan of the seating, has to be presented and reviewed by him. There's a sentence in there about making sure that there's an accessible aisle between all the tables. It's an ADA question to make sure that this is properly accessible. So all those things will go into that normal review process, and if there are issues that come up, then those will be addressed through the normal channels. As you said, parking, they have to, if this area is an outdoor open area, that will require additional parking spaces. So that'll all be addressed through the normal review process.
Well, you do raise a good point in regards to the life safety of the people that are in the building trying to get out of the building in case of an emergency. We have the building codes that say, for example, that in an assembly area, it's 7 square feet per person or 15 square feet per person. But what's to stop the building owner from taking advantage of that and putting, 2 square feet per person or 3 square feet per person and quadrupling the number of occupants? Which means that it reverberates back to noise, which goes back, no pun intended, goes back to the number of parking spaces, et cetera.
Well, obviously,
don't get me wrong.
No.
I'm all for this to happen. I'm all to encourage, prosperity of a building owner in this particular site as well. It sounds like you've got everything well under control. I'm just asking a couple of questions.
Right, no, it's fine. Obviously, when it's a brand new thing, it's going to be reviewed accordingly. If there is a situation, there is a language in there that says that if the property owner does want to add seats, he is supposed to talk to us. In a situation where a property owner chooses not to do that, then it does fall into the code enforcement department for them to go out and perhaps on a complaint basis would go out and re-review it, and if they're in violation of their permit, then it would be handled in accordance with the code enforcement proceedings.
I guess in regards to the life safety of the occupants inside the building trying to get out of the building, or emergency people trying to get inside the building to get to a victim. Do these seating areas have to be designated? I mean, are they striped on the pavement, or are they striped on the sidewalk, or has any thought been put into that?
Well, for the larger ones, there is just requirements for fencing around it. We chose not to do it on the smaller ones. Partially what we were thinking of is the ice cream shop that's at Calumet and
171st.
71st. That's a very small seating. There's probably only, I think there's 2 tables, if I remember correctly, or 3? Okay.
Right.
So depending upon how that could be 8 people. And so we were kind of thinking that was something that's tolerable and may not need to be separated out.
Thank you very much.
You had mentioned that you use the Planning Association services and also the community in West St. Paul.
Mm-hmm.
Any communication with West St. Paul?
No, I got their language
Okay.
through the service. I didn't talk to them directly, no.
Okay. I was just curious as to their successes or failures or whatever with the,
Well, I'm sure obviously there's always something I didn't think of. There's always potentially a problem, but I obviously I feel that addressed as many issues as I can at this time.
good job.
I have one other last question. When a business permit is issued to a restaurant, how is that regulated? Is that based on the size of the building, on the cost of the building, on the size of the property, or is it based on the number of seats?
They have to list the number of seats as part of the permit process. There's questions on the form to establish the restaurant size and square footage and also seating capacity.
So for example, if they have 100 seats inside the building, and he wishes during the nice weather we're going to get to put 25 seats outside the building, if he's not permitted for that, he's taking a risk.
Yeah, we may want to change that application for that and designate interior and exterior seating. So that we know, so that there's a record, there's
Sure.
a document that says, yeah, you were approved for
Well, and
20
that-
outside seats,
Right.
and now you got 50.
Right, and that's why it states in there that it must go to the building commissioner for that review, that seating chart. So we will have within that record, and it'll be documented into the improvement location permit that the building commissioner has signed off, and that floor plan will be, attached into the document.
But the floor plan will identify the number of seats. I think that's a good idea, inside and outside.
Right, you have a situation where, it's an existing restaurant, and then 10 years later, they want to add the outdoor seating. It's a matter of have the records been kept of the indoor seating? That's always a question, but we would certainly have the record for the new seating. That would be attached to the new permit.
Well, they have to state that annually. They have to write on there how many seats they have, and if there is a change, they're supposed to give backup documentation as to how they did it and how they got approved for it.
Right, and that, I would assume that would trigger, the building commissioner doing a review for the occupancy rating of the building and all those activities. So that's unchanged, all that activity will still occur.
Okay, any other questions for Brian?
I don't know, I'm going to stop
Oh, you
looking
got
at
another
Bill.
question? Mr. Hutton?
I do, thank you, Mr. President. I want to back this train up. On this floor plan, you're going to have the number of occupants inside and outside. And then you're also going to have, excuse my language, also there will be a designation on this floor plan of where this seating is on the outside.
Right, and which would also have a site plan associated with it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for our
What was that?
esteemed city planner? Any other questions? I'm going to open the public hearing. Public hearing's open. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to comment on CP 14-04? Anyone in the audience? Anyone in the audience? Public hearing's closed. Ryan, you want to give us a brief outline of your staff recommendation?
Sure. Again, I pretty much described the background already. I would go to the staff recommendation by saying that, we've prepared regulations that establish clear definitions of the uses and the provisions to limit as many adverse impacts as possible and providing an appropriate amount of regulation. We ask that the Planning Commission approve the text amendments regarding the restaurant open-air seating and outdoor seating and forward the ordinance to the City Council with a favorable recommendation. And of course, have the separate motion of, if the Planning Commission agrees with the recommendation, the staff requests that the report is adopted as findings of fact.
Anyone want to make that motion?
I'll make a motion that we accept the report as findings of fact.
Second it.
Motion and a second. Any questions or comments?
Yep. Brian, you did a great job. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
You had help from the zoning administrator too?
Yes, I did.
Thank both of you.
No questions or comments? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Motion passes. What else do we need to do with this?
You need
Hello.
to forward it to the City Council with a recommendation.
Anyone want to make that motion?
I would make the motion that we forward it to the City Council with a favorable recommendation.
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. Questions or comments? Hearing none. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Motion passes.
Okay, and I don't mean to put Councilman O'Pinker on the spot, but
I'll be a sponsor.
thank you. Thank you. The only thing I'm going to say is that normally I would submit this to the City Council or the clerk's office by Wednesday to appear next Monday, but I'm going to be out of town next Monday, so I have like 7 days to actually get it to the City Council, so it'll appear in the first part of April at City Council for first and second reading.
Do we have any correspondence? Any commissioner comments? Mr. Hunt?
No, Mr. President.
Thank you. Any staff comments? Brian?
At this time, I do not know if there's going to be an April meeting, so we'll let you know.
Thank you. Any public comments? Is there anyone in the audience who wants to comment? A motion adjourned?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments on the motion? Hearing none. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Motion passes.